Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for tuning in for another session of Switching It Up with Jimbo and Nick. Well, it's not just Jimbo and Nick that we've got with us this morning. So, first of all, morning, guys.
Morning.
Hi. Morning. How you doing?
Good yourself?
Fantastic. Yeah, not too bad. Great to be back into the studio. And now we've got, well, maybe an imposter or someone who's here to stay. I don't know.
We had to draft in another Nick because this Nick couldn't go sit too busy skiing.
So we got a new member of the team today, Nick G, as we're going to call him, because we've got Nick B. How long have you been working at BestPath now, Nick?
About 3 months now, so happy to be here.
Fantastic. And just for the purposes of people listening, what's your background and just a little bit of your experience before we crack on?
So I do technical sales. So over the last 10 years or so, I worked for Cisco, and then before that, I did work for a living, not just talk about it. So I was a network engineer before that. So I'm Australian, if you can't tell. So I was there. So I've been here in the UK for about 5 years now. So yeah, no, I'm pleased to be aboard.
No, fantastic. And we've had some great conversations since you've been on board. So it's really good to get you on the podcast today. So for the purposes of today, we're going to be talking about your recent holiday that you took. Oh no, it wasn't a holiday, was it? No, you went to Cisco.
It was a business invited trip.
So you went.
It's only a holiday if there's a beach there. There's only a canal.
So you went to Cisco Live in Amsterdam,
yes.
Yeah? So for the purposes of people who are tuned in today, who've never been to Cisco Live, why don't you just give us the sort of top level? What is it all about and what's it like?
Well, firstly, we're a bit late to the party because I think we should have done this a while back, but we've been busy, as you know.
There's been a few things going on.
I think there's been a few things going on. But yeah, no, I think what is Cisco Live about? I think it's about getting people into one space to talk about technology, innovation, and the art of the possible in terms of where technology's going and what focus points I think people should be looking at, whether that's individually for skills, technology, certifications, whether that's at the business level in terms of future-proofing architectures or environments from security through to monitoring and stuff. So I think that's fair, and it's also a good opportunity to meet the vendors, like the people you may get involved with,
and peers, right? And
peers,
people who work at other companies, get their perspectives.
Networking event, and obviously don't tell your wife, but there's a lot of beer involved.
Well, last year
she knows.
Last year when you were there, and I remember us talking to you after, like you came back, you were on practically every single interview and every single stage.
Yeah, not this year though. Not this year. I took it easy this year.
More hard work, yeah, yeah.
More listening.
So Nick, is it just completely all around Cisco, or is it very, very Cisco centric, or is it more of a sort of a wider spectrum of sort of consideration of what's going on in the industry? How did you find it?
So it's a mix. It's very, very, very Cisco centric, but I think there are like a lot of other vendors who are there, and you get to meet and talk to them about their products. It's very much around networking and how you interconnect into that Cisco ecosystem. So there was a myriad of vendors there, and it was interesting to sort of see and learn things that you don't necessarily know about. So it's really good for that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, I think if we look at the vendor landscape, I think you're right. I think historically it's always been very sort of Cisco focused, but I think for me this year, obviously cloud's taken a lot of pace in a lot of environments. So it's seeing how those vendors like Cisco are putting their spin on the different vendors out there, if that makes sense, because it's not just necessarily all about Cisco these days, because I think Cisco are more aware that they've got to start integrating with the ecosystems with AWS, GCP or Azure, or whatever it might be. So I think there was a good spin on a lot of different technologies there, wasn't there? But
for sure. I think it's also there's overlapping products with Cisco's products as well, which it has a little bit of friction, but it is interesting to get that perspective and hear both sides of the story as well.
Hence why it's good for you guys today to sort of get that holistic view, yeah?
Just to spend some dedicated time, right?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think everyone's lives are busy, and carving out some time to just focus on this stuff and spend time with peers and colleagues and peers and whoever.
So you kept the business going while these guys were...
No, I didn't. No, I was skiing.
Apologies for any service disruption.
But you find it to his pillow every night.
Missing you.
It was
poorly timed.
Unexpected birthday present.
So let's get back to the subject of networking. Nick G, you sort of just you covered on it. So from a networking perspective, what were the big takeaways? What was Cisco really pushing out there? And is how aggressive are they? What's the maturity of the products like? What are you seeing? What did you see firsthand?
I guess the biggest announcements I sort of took away, especially from the networking side, was the push towards more Meraki to the forefront. So and the ability to running Meraki, especially on Catalyst, things like that.
Yeah, it's the integration, wasn't it? The integration, the consolidation, and things like that. So trying to be more comprehensive or inclusive, I think, was their sort of main messaging. Like this year, like you say, bringing Catalyst, Meraki into...
And then on top of that as well, like Thousand Eyes coming down into each of their products. So they're really trying to leverage that space, which is a good space to be in, of like knowing what's going on with the network at a more end-to-end level. That was one of the things that was pretty prominent from a networking point of view. But I would also say that networking was less of an emphasis compared to security and some of their other pieces. And you can see where they've invested a lot of their money and things like that. So it was and also what wasn't talked about as well. Like obviously Splunk coming in as well now, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Oh, they kept that quiet, did they? Everybody knew it was happening.
Well, it wasn't because we actually asked about that because we were like, "Where is Splunk?" It hadn't closed yet, so it only closed recently. So that needed to happen before they could bring it in. But you could tell that there's a lot preparing for that because it's a massive acquisition.
So coming back to security then, what were your observations around that? And obviously that's an increasing conversation with your customer base. I know because we've covered it off in the podcast many times. What were they saying? What's new on the block, or is it just, as you rightfully said, is it just a greater enhancement of what they've already got?
Well, I think what I saw, my takeaway was that there was a very similar landscape to previous sort of SASE and stuff like that, right? If you think about those technologies, there's still a lot of products, and I think you said it's the alphabet soup of acronyms to bring it all together. So I think it's probably still fairly early days on that front, but I think from my perspective, it shows that I suppose Cisco are aware of these of the change in times, I suppose,
absolutely,
and the focus on cyber, and I think that for me was quite important. But again, for me, it was just the fact it still feels a little bit disjointed, I suppose, from that perspective. But I think I suppose, and I think this is, as you say, where Splunk wasn't quite at the acquisition, like the acquired state. I think maybe that will start to play a bit of a bigger picture.
Start's going to come.
I think the other big push,
and maybe Vegas will be a bit of a different story on some of that. I think
the big push also that they had was going towards more identity for security, and I think they used the term what can someone have access to, should they have access, and a continual push around checking that, which it is prominent, and they're more into the federating of many more other people's products from around identity, rather than sort of saying everything must be Cisco in that space.
Right, okay.
So, but it was pretty clear, I think, what James was saying about that's the Splunk is the missing piece to bring it together to give a view of it. And at the moment, like they had 16 letters up on screen at one point describing.
So just give us a little bit of an overview, guys, for anybody who doesn't know about Splunk. I mean, obviously it's been spoken about quite a lot in the industry. Just give us a quick 30 seconds on what that's about. And why is it going to be so valuable to Cisco?
Yeah, well, effectively it is a login system, right? It takes data in and you can manipulate it and present it in different ways. But I think the key thing for that is kind of what you were saying earlier, is a bit more vendor agnostic. So I think it will bring a bit of a different sort of perspective to incorporating lots of different platforms into it.
It will, I think, on that. Like, it is interesting because it does allow you to take those different products. But in Cisco previously having very sort of somewhat segmented products, I think that as a piece, especially in security, to bring those together will be interesting to see what they do with it.
They just needed all different data from different sources in one common place, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And then capabilities. Exactly that.
And is that a given now? So when you're going to go and see clients and things, is that a given where people are just expecting that functionality now? Because of obviously the complexity of their networks, and
I think it's implied with a lot of products these days, right? I think if you look at cyber products that, like Cisco's, as you said, they've got a lot of different products that are trying to be brought together to do something unique. But if someone was building it from the ground up, they would build it with a Splunk-like functionality on the back end anyway, right? Okay. Because and Cisco have tried to do that with Talos and stuff like that, right? So effectively they would come at that with that kind of mindset anyway, because cybersecurity is about data, right? If you don't have the information, then you don't you can't do anything.
It's not even just cyber though, right? It's anything at all. You think about any network operations, right? You need the data. How are you rendering it?
I think that's
cybersecurity, mate.
That's also where, like, it used to be that the more information you gave, the better, because you could say, I can find this out. That doesn't cut it anymore, because false positives, all this overload of information, be able to distill that down to get somewhere is sort of what customers looking for.
Data is just the data. Doesn't mean you can going to get anything valuable out of it, which you see every client you speak to, they're like, I've got all of this stuff and I still got ops team struggling.
Yeah, but if you've got 3 or 4 systems that are acting as one that can dip into data and give a different perspective.
Exactly.
But you still got to put it into context, and that's going to be the interesting part about what they do with it.
Yeah. It's still a lot of money.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think you guys said it was about 28 billion.
Well, pocket change, isn't it? Just out of the back of the
couch. Do you think the owners were happy?
I would be.
You like to think so?
So it's interesting though, because this is a massive departure. Cisco's never had. I think their biggest other acquisition is about 6 or 8 billion or so, and that was for satellite set-top boxes on TV. So this is a big bet for the company, so I'll be interested to see where they go.
Yeah, but it really shows, doesn't it, how important they see it.
Yeah, for sure.
And also as where the industry is going, I guess.
Well, data's the new oil, isn't it?
I
said before, right? It's, the reality is that if you've got the data and you can store it and you can get it back out, then you can do a lot with it.
That's a lot of development that's got to be done, though, right? To get the value back out of that investment, the amount of products they're going to have to go back and update and integrate.
I think that's the part of the key with Splunk, though, is that hopefully shortcuts some of that. Yeah. Because it is a platform that's built to take disparate information, and that's always been a big, I guess, drawback with Cisco a little bit. So you're right, like there's a lot of work to do, and how they organisationally function and that sort of stuff. That'll be interesting to see.
Yes.
So we're going to have a complete separate podcast on AI, and everybody talks about AI, but I would imagine that was big in the window out there.
Naturally,
the end of every sentence,
so AI and C, every sentence, AI this, AI that. You know, Nick, you and I were talking about it last week, weren't you? And you were saying, well, some of it is a lot of BS.
99%.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, boots on the ground, you were out there. What did you see? And beyond that, you must be starting to see good, strong, practical applications of how you're using AI. Yeah.
You answer. I'll stay silent on that one.
I think the hot air blowing out says it all, doesn't it?
I think that the key takeaway was that it's still very much a following rather than trying to create something that's solving a new problem. So there was text interfaces where you could interact with the devices to ask questions. Now, I don't know how practical that is, but there were multiple of those across different products, which I know isn't practical because you don't want to have to go to one system for phone calls or one system for security and things like that. So it's a developing thing, and so AI, like, you know, as Nick says, it can mean anything to anyone, but it means everything to everyone at the same time. So it was talked about a lot. I think they're trying to push to get information is pretty critical and data and how they send that around, but they've got a bit of work to do, I think, on what AI means and actually sort of making it.
But I think it comes back to the information part, right? Is that it's my takeaway was it was still in its infancy, as you say. It was very rudimentary in its I want to say it felt very rudimentary in its implementation. Sure. It would probably suit a lot of small medium enterprises as it stood today, but for large enterprises, it's probably light years away because obviously we discussed around skill sets previously in other podcasts. Yeah. The reality is the smaller businesses lack the skill sets, and those sort of AI chatbots that you're talking about would maybe be beneficial in that space. But when you start looking at larger enterprises where they've got the skills, they can automate stuff of their own accord. It didn't feel like it had a natural place, right?
Yeah. Chatbot's not AI, right? Go on the website and say, what time are you open till? And then let the chatbot go, the store's open from 9 to 5.
And that's sort of AI, when you implement a function on it, it ceases to be AI, it becomes the function. So I'm sure they're doing things in their systems where it enhances the security, but it's not called AI, it's called whatever it's doing. Yeah, exactly, like a spell checker is AI, but it's just, now we call it a spell checker. Yeah. And so, but those functions are there, but that's harder to sort of,
I guess, though, right?
It is.
And it was good to see that
it improves the products
to do something because, well, I think they need to, because obviously we spoke about Gartner and stuff before, and their narrative is all about AI, generative
Sure.
AI, fabric AI, vendor AI. There's so many different interpretation of what AI means to different people, right? So and I think we've touched on it before that vendors have to. I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on vendors to deliver some of those AI
For sure.
capabilities into customers, because customers aren't going to have the infrastructure or the skills or the place to do it themselves, right? So I think there's a lot of emphasis on vendors to try and come up and define this narrative for customers to consume.
Sure.
But if that's the case, it's never going to be heavyweight. It's always going to be a lightweight application, because, as you say, it was disparate where they had collaboration, they had firewalling, all with different AI bots that you could integrate with. But for a customer, they might not be using Cisco collaboration, but they are using firewalling, or maybe.
Yep.
So from that perspective, I kind of felt
I still think though on that,
made sense.
I still think if you still have one that should be modular enough so that you have one thing and then you use the parts that you use, not having separate, because it just means then.
But then it comes back to that conversation that we always have, is that you've got to have 80% of something to build on, right? If you don't have that, then you can't get to the final product anyway. So I think it's
I guess also as well that from your customer's perspective, they're hearing the news around AI and it's a big buzzword, and I suppose it keeps you guys. You understand what's going on. You can be relevant. You can be fresh.
It's another tick box for the auditors, isn't
absolutely.
it?
You got it.
But it's also
Sure.
Look, if you think about the overarching relevance of networking, and people, I guess, would say it's waning, especially on premise.
Yeah.
But this blows that out of the water, because yes, you go to large providers, but corporates, like having your data and where that is, it's going to mean that it's easier to have it there, and you've got to build systems because it's so much data that you've got to go through. So it's relevant to networking. But everything's relevant. But it will be.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a separate podcast on AI, but also as well, and we're going to have. I think our next one is around sustainability, because AI has a huge impact on sustainability as well,
massively,
and we're going to be talking about all that, which is quite interesting. So the next point I know you shared with me was around what you saw on observability. So what was anything new on the block, or was it just being amplified a little bit more? What are you seeing with that?
Well, I think it was a bit more of a driver to get more from endpoints. I think.
So the biggest piece was they've like the agents running within that are now auto updatable, and it runs from its own cloud instance. So again, sort of we can get a cloud instance for everything. But
I'm going to start trolling.
Okay.
Come on.
Right, let's
Mix it up.
Let's put all of the vendor stuff aside, right? So forget what announcements are coming about observability. I'll pose it differently. How more mature are customers now with their observability platforms today than they were 12 months ago?
What data do you want us to base that on?
Any day.
I think the key thing, like, is Cisco again did a big acquisition with AppD is to drive a lot of their observability. Yeah. I think the relevance of how Cisco talks to their customers and how the level that is somewhat finding a level, but whether that cuts through enough, like that's the interesting part.
We've discussed this before, though. Yeah. Observability can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? So
I think people still struggle with knowing what data they want to see. You can put all the platforms in there. You could sell them $1,000. You could sell them whatever you want.
It's still very much tied to the transaction, which I always say Cisco or networking really isn't good at dealing with an application. It's good with dealing with 1,000 and how they tack onto each other, because networking is pretty basic for one, and that is where it's sort of break.
Our whole careers have been based around it.
It's complex.
Yeah, but it is
10 years to learn BGP.
but that's what I mean is though managing the contention around all those applications that run a business is what networking's good at.
Yes.
But then getting visibility around that is hard, and so and then getting visibility around that within context is probably even harder. / is it even what the business want to see?
But this is what I'm saying is they're focusing on the endpoints, right? Because the deciding factor of that application segmentation, as you quite rightly point out, is with the endpoint. It's not with being able to distinguish it in a pipe. If you put water and oil down the same pipe, it's very hard to decipher which is which, right? When you filter out the other end. But and I think if you can go to the source, you can get that information like before it goes into the pipe. Right?
Put them in separate pipes, mate.
Well, there could be separate pipes, but people don't, right?
No, exactly. But I think it's sort of what your point is, though. What's changed in a year? Not much. Not much. But I think the product's changing. But whether or not that's cutting through, it's still up in the air.
Yeah, but
product's not changing, but it's the narrative
mindset.
But it's the narrative from the user base, so from the customers. What's coming back from them? Are they putting a greater emphasis on it? So the products might be the same, or it's not really kicked on too much. But is there a greater emphasis from what your customers are talking to you about around observability? And are they leading the agenda more? I don't know. Does it make it a little bit more?
Not leading the agenda, no. But I suppose a different question is how long from an announcement, right? Say any vendor, Cisco is an example, but anyone coming out with a new strategy of how a way to do something. How long does it take to filter down?
Oh, it's a year or two, right?
To customers actually do it.
Yeah.
I'd say it's longer.
Oh,
I'd say it's probably 3 to 4.
Customers doing it and asking for it, yeah?
Customers doing it on a day-to-day basis.
Maturity.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's
Okay.
that's sort of the
adoption.
Yeah, that's
adoption
maturity, isn't it? Product maturity includes adoption, right? If you got a new product, the maturity levels are low, the adoption's low. You take a product 2 years down the line, it's always going to be more mature, and so the adoption rate's going to be higher, right?
I think though with observability, like it's most people worry about like with a very narrow focus about the part that is relevant to them, and whereas it's harder then to sort of try and broaden that out to looking about like more of the business because so. To answer your question, like what customers are saying 100 things at once because each want their own thing, and so trying to give them one view of that is pretty hard because you're trying to meet the needs of 100 people. So, like it's a while yet before it sort of settles down. But I think point products, or not point products, but ways of viewing those individual pieces is probably more mature than seeing the whole.
It's also open to interpretation because each business is going to be different.
Yeah.
Right, I think when you've got an outcome, because observability is an outcome. It's not. I don't think it. I know Cisco have got products, FSO and stuff like that they say are delivering on it. But for me, observability is an outcome. Right. It's not a specific product. It's not a specific use case. It's end to end. It's an outcome of what you're seeing. Right. Of the information that you want to see. So I think I think it's always going to be something that's a little bit untangible.
It is. And every customer's different, right?
On.
They've got different cultures, different budgets.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we were sitting here next year, we'd probably have the same conversation.
It will be the same.
Because I don't think the maturity the maturity of the mindset will be more.
Sure.
But I think if you went from customer A to B and C, I think you would probably find observability within those customers would be very different.
Oh, massively.
So one of the big statements that you shared with me that Cisco said was this was their best portfolio ever. Okay, so that's what they're saying. What are you seeing? Because they said it's more integrated, more open, more automated, secure, and obviously more AI powered. And they're obviously the big buzzwords that they're pushing at Cisco Live. You know,
I think so.
Do you believe that that's the case?
To say something is more of each of those things, well, yes, it is patently, but does that mean where it's need to be? Like it is, I would say it is their most integrated, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's integrated enough.
No, and that's my view. I think that's fair. I think Cisco selfishly have probably got a few hurdles in some of that stuff, but they're going in the right direction.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
If we talk about platform unification, you can see that's on the roadmap.
Yeah,
you can see that's on the horizon. You're already seeing it with the Catalyst and the Meraki consolidation, right? So I think that's a good start, and the unification of that. Are they fully integrated? I'm not convinced, but we said this.
You wouldn't expect them to either, right? Things take a long time.
Things take time. They do take time, and I think that's not a bad thing because at the same time is that if you go, you'll never bring a product to market if it's ready to go from the outset. So I get why it's never.
I think though the push towards the Catalyst portfolio and wireless on Meraki gives a vision that I guess has been coming for a number of years now. So and they're getting there. So which is a plus. You wish they'd go faster, obviously, but.
Yeah,
the trend there is people want stuff simpler, right? They want stuff in one place, data in one place, and they want things provisioned easier.
Yeah, but this is what they're working towards, right? So Cisco Live, the keynote, was very good at this, right? Because they said exactly that, right? If you take the security portfolio, they've scrapped SecureX and all those kind of things, and they're bringing it into a single product. but there's still 5 or 6 products underneath that
Yeah.
they're rolling into it. Whereas the Catalyst stuff is a bit more advanced because they kind of taken Meraki as the leader and gone, right, well, let's get Catalyst in there and give our customer base an option to be either Meraki on Meraki devices or on Catalyst devices. And in time, I'm sure the Meraki portfolio will just completely disappear and it'll just be the standard Catalyst portfolio, right? But for me, that's where I want to see the integration, right? Is any hardware, any OS on there. If I want to run a enterprise OS, if I want to run a DC OS, that's what I want, right, from a product, because it feeds into sustainability as well, right? Is that if they can deliver on a unified platform that does everything, then it gives them the ability to
reuse hardware.
To reuse hardware, right? So I think so from that perspective, they are doing a lot, and they've seen the messaging coming out of the industry saying, look, you need to unify
They've been listening,
and then roll in, right? And I think that's starting to take shape.
I think the biggest thing for me, like we sort of talk about integration, I don't think it's actually the goal, because that's slow
Yes.
But I think
It's
loosely
modular.
coupling
Yeah,
so that you can plug them in, and it's getting there. So
Good. Have you got your Vegas tickets booked yet then?
No.
We're going to. What we could do is, what you need to do is a live broadcast. Okay, so I need to come.
Yeah.
and we need to do a live broadcast in Vegas. So very quickly, because we're going to wrap up. Just quickly, James, what was your biggest takeaway, do you think?
My biggest takeaway was you can't sit still. I think there's lots going on. Security, whether it's security on premise, whether it's security in the cloud, security is a big factor for a lot of organisations today, because I think if we look at cloud and things like that, it's been left untouched for a bit of time, and I think security controls are starting to become more aware of the cloud as a factor in businesses. I think was important. I think the AI piece was quite prevalent, but I think that's prevalent with every vendor. And then obviously just the sort of insights piece, I think was quite visible, I think, from my point of view.
Nick?
I think the biggest takeaway was the dual challenge of AI versus sustainability, those two pieces, and how they conflict a little bit. So that's the part, both of those were in pretty much every topic that they talked about, and yet they sort of don't go that well together, because one uses consumer a
we're
lot
going to
more
talk
power.
about that in the next podcast.
And so
but you're right on point about what you're saying. So it's like on the one hand everyone's driving it, on the other hand everyone's talking about sustainability. It's like yin and yang. So Nick, you're going to let them go again next year, or are you going to pull rank and?
No, he's going, because I've got a fucking new one. So.
Right, guys, that's been great. Nick, thanks for joining us today. He's added another dimension. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
It was fun.
I think we're going to get you back on another podcast, so thanks for coming along. And until the next time, guys and girls listening, we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, thanks. Bye-bye.